Bitcoin, Ethereum, SWIFT coin, and AMP are about to take off. Let's get into it. Let's actually start with Bitcoin. For those of you who are new to the channel or just finding this channel for the first time, like, subscribe, donate if you want, become members. 50% of everything I make goes to save animals' lives. But we see Bitcoin at its major drop-off. It's way away from the 200 EMA and needs to have some consolidation above this red downward trend line before we can start building our support. Ideally, we want to be closing above this previous low right here around 62,000. Everybody's watching the $60,000 mark, but when we zoom out in the bigger picture, it's pretty rough writing. All of this right here, let me circle it for you. So for those of you who have not been in the channel, this entire area is more or less market manipulation. The reason I say that is because this day right here, October 10th, is whenever we had that major decrease in price due to the government being shut down. Perfect timing. It was absolutely perfect timing because this orange bar right here was essentially what we were expecting. We've seen it from the past 17 years Bitcoin's been in play, and it was supposed to follow that route. Government shut down. We are building a cryptocurrency reserve. They said, we don't want to spend 120,000 per Bitcoin. Let's tank the price and maybe get it at 85,000. You know what? Let's have Jerome Powell exit as the chairman and have a further decrease in price. And essentially January 29th is when we broke that upward trend line where we were supposed to hold support, and we had the major retracement. Right now, what we want to see, obviously, is a sharp pullback or at least at bare minimum consolidation. If we have a close below this, then people start panicking. We see a quick sell-off, and that's why people talk about the $50,000 price tag for Bitcoin, because last time this was more or less our support and resistance zone right around that 50. We see we tested it multiple times, finally found it as support and took off. Here back in history, we had it as major resistance. So 68,000 is in that sweet spot where everybody's in confusion, everybody's in panicking, fear, and selling off, when really the people who know what Bitcoin is worth should be holding on to it for dear life, if not stacking more around $67,000 mark. Heed my words. You guys will come back to this video when we are up and around 100,000 again and be like, why did I not listen to Neil and enter in at $67,000? You guys are getting the opportunity of a lifetime, since you guys did not buy in whenever it first came out at 139. $67,000 is still fairly cheap. Yeah, it may be $17,000 over its low, but it's still pretty cheap. Let's actually dig into SWIFT coin. This one's for Amelia's bracelets, as she requested it. So SWIFT coin is actually something to keep an eye on. I haven't brought it up for a while because we've been in our drawback and our consolidation, but we see that I had this black trend line placed right here where we were looking for support. And what's crazy is that even though we were testing it as support right here, and then Jerome Powell said good afternoon, and it tanked below that upward trend line, this is showing you market manipulation as well. This should have not happened. We got a new Fed chair, and that guy is Crypto Pro. So instead of Jerome Powell, who wants to control every single asset, this guy will actually try and help the cryptocurrency market. Granted, every person is going to try and sway it in their favor. This right here is the liquidity sweep. This is for the people that say, okay, if we close below anywhere below 0.0035, which we've seen held as support these previous times, that is where we're going to sell. And everybody and their grandma sold on this one candle. Everybody who's not an idiot was buying at that point and bought it right back up within 2 days. So the people who were freaking out and just had their stop loss in, they got tapped out, and it came right back and pushed up above that support line being 0.003. So SWIFT is actually looking pretty good, and it's going to be in comparison to AMP. I haven't brought up AMP for a long time, but those of you who have been following my channel, this is for your reference. So when we come back to this video, if you can find it within my 500 videos that I've posted, or nearly 500, a ridiculous amount of videos for the amount of members I have, by the way. For the members that have become members, shout out to you guys. The $31 total a month that I get from your guys' support. It may take a quarter of a year, but we may be able to save an animal's lives. If you guys have not become a member, definitely just do it. $10 is like placing 2 trades, but you get a lot of extra insight on coins that I don't bring up on my channel. AMP being one of them, I may bring it back up because it is looking pretty nice. The bottom is here around the 0.0014. We are pretty much bottomed out. One thing we would want to see in this area when we zoom in is looking down here at these volume candles. We see we had major volume candle when we were at that low at the 0.00160, and we had that push up to the 200 EMA, got that rejection. We've gotten the rejection off the 200 EMA many times. Keeping in mind this is the daily. Let's look at previous history. We were in the red underneath the 200 EMA. Rejection once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then we found our support. Once we got over that 200 EMA and that push up, just from entering above that 200 EMA, within 2 weeks, around 221%. Keeping in mind the stock market's around 10%, 8 to 10% a year, 220%. Let me say that again. 220% in 2 weeks. Stock market's 10% a year if you're lucky. So we've tested this 200 EMA after we crossed it. Maybe you could say this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now if we come up 10 and then break it, test it as support, your entry you would be looking for AMP is around here around 0.0027. And the probability risk to reward, potential 260 increase, and almost nothing for AMP. But if you are entering below the 200 EMA, not recommended, you're looking at nearly 453% at this current price. Wait for your entry, wait for validation, wait for volume, wait to see what the RSI is doing because it's still a little oversold, but it doesn't have the support we need. We want to see this purple come back, test the yellow as support, and then by then we could be consolidating, getting closer to that 200 EMA than you would be looking for the entry. Moving back to SWIFT, jumping around a lot here, but let's look at the bigger picture. Boom, there's our bottom and our upward trend line, more or less. G. Boom. So the lines, let's remove some of this. It's more or less irrelevant. Fibonacci can be dragged lower to its absolute low. So the real resistance for SWIFT coin, besides the 0.007, 0.008, is this first Fibonacci retracement at 0.013. The thing that you would want to look at for entering, volume. You'd want to see some volume pickup. RSI. What's RSI look like? More or less healthy, but we could expect a little bit of a pullback, and we want to see that hold on top of the yellow. If not, we could see it cross underneath the yellow, form a nice purple W, as long as we are building higher lows in the RSI. So anywhere in this area, all of this range is where we want to see it hold support. If we can even hold support here when it's pushed into the oversold, as long as it does its reversal and pulls right back up, holding above this 0.002, then you may be considering a bigger entry on SWIFT coin. There's pretty good utility behind SWIFT coin. It's got a very nice risk to reward ratio, when you go back in history, there's not much to look at. We mainly have this one blip here in January, which the entire market ate up like candy when that happened. You saw it with XCN, you saw it with a bunch of cryptos, and the major market manipulation was October 10th right here. So when we were trying to hold this support at the 0.007 in this fair value gap, which is correlation to this previous support, which is correlation to the previous support here, and correlation to the resistance and support here, all of this is the first major resistance. So if we do push up over the 200 EMA, expect some consolidation in that area, which would give you the opportunity to put in your trade. Everybody else and their grandma's watching that area, and so there's no real reason to put in a bigger position down here. Yes, it is a pretty big price differential, but you are putting your risk at a higher risk than reward. That's about 100% increase in price, pretty substantial. And from that entry point, 618 is around 724. But if you wait for it to get above that 200 EMA, say you see it enter in at the 0.007, yes, you are giving up about 50% or 300% in this case of the potential profit, but you are lowering your risk substantially. That's the main differential. Yes, you're not just entering and say, hey, it's at this point, I'm going to enter. You can, and you can potentially scalp that extra percentage, but say you enter in at that point, and then it comes up here, and then it retraces right back underneath the 200 EMA. Yeah, that's when you would be looking for your sell-off, but that's also when you're looking for your buy. So this is how the market works. There's buyers, there's sellers. We all know this. This is the more likely higher probability that it'll go up if it can hold within this area. If you're entering here, you have no idea if this is going to continue down to 0.00001 if it breaks this level. But if this does hold support, you could potentially be looking for that entry to ride it up into the 0.008 area. The other main thing to keep in mind is the downtrend trend line. Trend lines are extremely important and are a part of my strategy. If we can get this to cross over this downward trend line and maintain some stabilization, consolidation, I'd start looking at this as a bear and say, okay, we're not getting a whole bunch of volume. People aren't selling this much more because there's not a whole bunch of opportunity to scalp this area. Yes, if it breaks that, you could expect a lower price point down to roughly here, the 0.0009. But the risk to reward isn't the best. If I were a bear, I would be very weary because if this crosses this trend line, that could be considered support, and we could easily see SWFT do its reversal along with the rest of the market. More or less, we are waiting for the Clarity Act to see what people can give as rewards, what people can earn as staking rewards, and AMP and SWIFT, I will be bringing them back in. Right now, everything's in consolidation. So take your time, pinpoint your entry, make sure you are eyeballing this correctly, because if AMP, for example, breaks this 0.001, it's got all this range to play in before finding support. Not financial advice, just information. Like, subscribe, donate if you want. 50% of everything I make goes to save animals' lives. Good luck, have fun with it, and I will see you guys on the next one.